Good afternoon, and hello to everyone and anyone that's joining me today. So glad to be here. This is Aurelia Davis, the educator's educator, and I have a good topic for you today. It was so good I couldn't contain myself, so I had to do it live to let you know what was going on. Um, a couple of weeks ago, well, first of all, if you're your first time, my name is Aurelia Davis, the educator's educator. I am a former school teacher. I retired in 2012 after teaching for over 31 years. Enjoyed doing what I did and just wanted, after retirement, I just decided I wanted to continue to share some of the joys of teaching, because there are some joys of teaching if that's what you want to do, and just let some teachers be aware and give the needed support that is teachers are asking for these days. So I'm coming to you live, and I talk about a variety of topics, and just want you to just come on in here and let's hear about it. Well, today we're talking about censorship of books in our in our libraries, censorship of books in our school libraries, censorship of books in our school libraries, because public libraries, you can basically get any book that you want. But a school library, there's a movement out now to start to control these libraries again. And it was so interesting because I read the article about here we are in 2022, and we're starting to take books off the shelves that talk about race and sexuality and the gay communities. And we're talking about all of those things. And they do not want children to be exposed to it. And I'll give my opinion about that a little later. But just to get into a little history about about censorship of our books or books. It says during the 17th century, a typical form of book censorship in the United States was a book burning. And so what people would do is they would gather books that they felt was not Christian enough or was sending the wrong message, and they would have a book burning. Well, that eventually became, that was eventually, there was a law against that. There was a law against that. But what has happened is that I'm finding that more throughout the year that these years, there's still a need or a push to take certain books out of libraries, school libraries, so that children will not be exposed to it. And like I said before, at the end of this, I'll give my own opinion about this. And so while reading this, they were talking about how, anything that's talking about the LGBTQ community or race, anything about slavery, anything about the Holocaust, all of those things are what they want to ban. And when they're saying ban these books from the libraries, they're basically trying to say that these things did not happen. They're not trying to encourage children to read about cultural problems or that slavery did exist, because there was a time when we did not study African American history. And at the same time, when we did not study, we didn't know. We don't know how, some of our children didn't know how African Americans ended up in the United States. And the only way you can find out about how African Americans ended up in the United States is to read African American history. So after a while, there was a section on slavery that was entailed in a lot of history books as far as American history is concerned, because that's what ended up happening. And I think they're even trying to squash that, to say that slavery never happened. Well, you know what? That's not going to work. That's not going to work. But what I want to do is just basically go over a list, because I was able to download a list that says banned books in 2022. And you would be surprised, oh my goodness, as to books that I used to read that they are no longer suggesting. And then this particular book banned list, they even tell what it entails as to why it was banned. So I have like a list here, but I'm not going to go through. I'm just going to bring up a few because it's too many. It was about 29 pages worth. And the thing that I am more familiar with than anything else is any books that was written by African Americans that included race or slavery or those types of things. For instance, The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison. The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison. That particular book has been banned because what it stated is that the Morrison's 2007 heartbreaking book, The Bluest Eye, is about an 11-year-old Black girl in America who prays for her eyes to turn blue so that people will think she is beautiful. So this basically twists it around because you have those books where children are not really looking at them, embracing themselves as to who they are and loving the color that they're in. So I can see that, but I do also see that it can be a book that can be a learning tool and you can turn it around to twist it so that children will learn how to develop good skills as far as self-esteem and would not have low self-esteem if they felt that they wanted to be a different color. We talk about colorization in the Black community, how children look at long flowing hair and look at their skin tones, and if you the darker you are, it's not a good thing. So some books can be reversed to the point where you can take it and make it into something positive. That's what I'm basically saying. So Toni Morrison's The Bluest Eye, and that book was made a long time ago. Then they turned around. Well, the newest one is The Handmaid's Tale. I haven't gotten into that. As knowing what that's about. I've heard some things about it, but I'll have to investigate that a little bit more on my own. And then some of the ones that just sort of threw me for a loop. Oh, another one was the Love You Hate. Now that young lady, not the Love You Hate. I'm sorry. It was the Hate You Love. I'm sorry, The Hate You Love. Well, that's about that brings us up into 2022, 2023, and talks about police brutality against African American boys. And it was a book, and then it was also turned into a movie. And so they're seeing this as something that they're trying to quiet down a little bit with all of the shootings and the killings of African American men. This book basically plays into that. And they're saying that this is something that, those people that are involved in this, they are saying that they don't want that to be exposed. Well, if you don't expose it through a book, the children are going to get it some other kind of way, even if it's through a chat or through a text message. Okay, so you banning it in the library, in the school library, does not mean that children are not going to have access to it. So the Love You Hate, The Hate You Love. I'm sorry, I keep saying it wrong. And then they start getting into some things. Animal Farm. Well, Animal Farm was a book, oh my goodness, that was written a long, long time ago. And it was, because it was new, it was really, at the time, it was considered very controversial. And I haven't read it in a long time. Some of these books were given to us as part of our reading list in high school, not necessarily not elementary school, but in high school, we were told we would get a reading list of books that we were supposed to read before the year was over. And then, of course, we would go back to our English classes and discuss different things. And so the Animal Farm is in its 75th anniversary edition. And it says, unlike other books which may be banned for several reasons, there's really only one main reason that Animal Farm has ever been banned. They say it's the critique of communism, the critique of communism. So the underlining information and effects that some books have is what they're looking at closely also. Catcher in the Rye, that's another older book. I mean, those books came out like in the 60s and the 70s. And explores 3 days in the troubled life of a 16-year-old boy who has been a favorite of Censor since its publication. And they are saying that they fired a teacher. Once a teacher decided to assign this book to her class, they fired her because of some of the things that it entailed. So some of these, I'm not going to go through all of them, but I want you to just sort of tap into them as far as finding out exactly why they might have been censored. and Catcher in the Rye, and then Animal Farm, old books that were when they were around when I was a child. Now, these sort of threw me off the deep end. It threw me off the deep end. Where the Wild Things Are. That was in, I had 2 or 3 copies of that in my library, Where the Wild Things Are. And the other one, Charlotte's Web. Oh my God. Well, this is what they say. Where the Wild Things Are, they say it was psychologically damaging and traumatizing to children. That means you basically would not take Where the Wild Things Are and take it to a preschool. Give me a break. I wouldn't read that to my 3-year-old or 4-year-old because they couldn't relate to it, but they wouldn't understand what it was. But it's about fantasy and wild things and everything. And they were saying that this book has been largely banned in the South, in the southern states, whatever those include. The southern states have basically banned this particular book. I don't know if it's still out there, but it's still like 2022. So we're looking at individuals, we're looking at families that read these books, and now all of a sudden it's not a good book for their child to read. It's funny and it's confusing and it's crazy, okay? It's crazy because it does not mean that these children still will not have the opportunity to get these books. And people that say there's a movement because they're banning books in the school libraries, they're telling people to go out and purchase books, purchase as many books, and especially on these banned library books, because this is how we gain knowledge. Okay, we gain knowledge from reading. And if you're keeping half of it away from me, how am I going to learn? Okay. Charlotte's Web, they said in 2006, Kansas banned this book because talking animals was blasphemous and unnatural. So I can about imagine what they did. And now that I'm thinking about it, Mother Goose and fairy tales at one time was no. Okay, Mother Goose, I think they took that out of some schools. And then especially when teachers were reading and the children, and it was not taken literally. Children were not taking things literally, but maybe children are taking things literally now, where they believe they read it and they believe it exists. And that's where the person that's reading the book to the child has to let the child know this is a fantasy. It does not exist. This is just basically to entertain you. And it pushes creativity. It pushes creativity. So we want our children to be creative. We want them to be artistic. We want them to be a rounded, full rounded adult, as they grow up. And unless they're exposed to all of these things, that's not going to happen. So Where the Wild Things Are and Charlotte's Web, well, I would still do that. Okay, Harry Potter, OMG. The Sorcerer's Stone. How my children were reading those books left, and I would stay away from them, because they were reading them in my classroom. But at the same time, I would let them tell me what was going on in the book itself. And then, of course, from all of that, and then the movies came out. You can't keep that away from children. Well, they say that Harry Potter, this private Catholic school. So they're looking at sorcery as being witchcraft. They're looking at sorcery as being witchcraft. And they're saying within a Catholic environment or a religious environment, they do not promote that. But that's part of the creativity. And you, as that child is picking up that book to read it, then you let them know what's real and what's not real, fact or fiction, in other words, what is an actual fact, and then what's actual, fiction. And it gets into all kinds of things. And that's when you, as the educator, can take children down a different path to explain these things to them, because you are the educator. You are the educator. So you are there to expose those children to as much wholesome information as possible. Wholesome. So they took Harry Potter off. Okay. Let me see, what else did they do? My screen keeps going in and out. I don't know what's happening with that. I'm just going to mention a few more That, oh, Lord of the Flies, that was very always controversial. That was also always in a lot of these books. A lot of these books was made from movies, made into movies. A lot of these books were made into movies, like Lord of the Flies. They say A Day in June, that talks about illustrating a pride parade. So they're down on that part. That particular community that they don't want to encourage at all, and it does not mean that the community is going to die. No, it does not. That means the community, because you are telling me not to, most likely I'm going to find a way to find out how it looks. I'm going to find out how to read. I'm going to get me a copy. And that's what the children are basically saying to themselves. So, Lord of the Flies, I'll give you a few more. Goosebumps again. Goosebumps. Oh, Goosebumps. Yes. Oh, my children were reading those books and it helped them learn how to read. Okay. It gave them the motivation. It gave them the stimulation, because they wanted to know what was going to happen. So they were reading, they were avid readers during this time, very avid readers. I mean, book after book after book after book, which made my job easier as an educator, because they were going through some of the things I needed to teach them in order for them to become better readers. Okay, so Goosebumps, they knocked that one out the park. Oh my God, I'm just going to go through a few more, because as this list was being printed off, I really got into, oh, Harriet the Spy. Harriet the Spy was challenged in 1983, a high school board member, where some argued the book encouraged children to disrespect their parents. Oh my goodness. No. If that child reads that book and then comes to you with some of the things that have happened in the book, then you're supposed to check that situation right then and there. You're supposed to check that situation right then and there. It's called parent responsibility. It's called teachers communicating with their students to let them know what's appropriate and what's inappropriate. What's appropriate and inappropriate. I had one more, and then it's because this one threw me for a loop. Oh my goodness. Dr. Seuss. Here we go. Hop on Pop. They said that in 2014, a Toronto public school library received a formal complaint from the delightful Dr. Seuss book, claiming that the book encourages children to use violence against their fathers. I'll say that one more time. Let me turn my phone off. It says that Hop on Pop, Dr. Seuss, I have to lean, that this encourages violence against an adult. Well, like I said before, there's the child and there's the adult. How can a child become violent with the adult? Unless you let it happen. Whoa, I have to take a breath and just think about that. So, my final question is this. If we're taking all of these books off the shelves, what is there left to read? If we're taking these books off the shelves, what is there left to read? Because books take children into a whole different world of fantasy and creativity and joy and sadness and hope and hopelessness. It takes them to the levels of emotions that we as adults cannot sometimes portray to our children. So books take them into that world. And that world is needed in order for the child to become a whole person by reading. Books have encouraged people to be scientists. Books have encouraged people to be doctors. Books have encouraged people to be inventors. Books have encouraged people to be artists, like singers and actors and ballerinas. In fact, this particular book right here, I hope you can see it, The Black Ballerina, My Journey Legacy. This is by Misty Copeland. Misty Copeland. And so, would you not give this book to a child that may not. Oh, let me put this question this way: would you give this book to a boy? Could a boy read this book also? Yes, he could, because there are male ballet dancers. There are male dancers that work in ballet companies. So yeah, this book would be perfect for a boy or a girl. Anybody that inspires themselves to be a ballerina or ballet dancer. This is a good book. A good book. So I don't know how far this is going to go. It's only happening in some states. And the way I see it is that as one complaint comes up, then you just knock out the whole thing. That's just like that phrase, throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Throwing the baby out with the bathwater. And it when it comes down to it, it doesn't make sense. But what has happened is that we have taken control of our lives and other people's lives, invoking what we believe on them, which is not really fair, because I was not born to the mother you gave that gave birth to you. I lived in a different house, came from a different parent, lived in a different neighborhood, and probably lived in a different country. So you cannot invoke on me what you believe. And I do not knock you for believing what you believe. But that's your opinion, and I have my opinion. Interesting. If you would like to talk a little bit more about this, feel free to go over to Aurelia Davis, the educator's educator, AureliaDavis.com. Click on the Work With Me tab and book a session. I would love to talk to you more about this, or you leave some comments, or email me about what you think about what's happening with this new rise in banning books. I'm saying that eventually all the library shelves will be empty if we don't leave something for our children to read. Well, that's another day. What can we say? Take care. Have a good one. This is Aurelia Davis, the educator's educator. Glad talking to you today. Take care and think about books. Books make books create life. There you go. Books create life. Take care. Have a great one.